let's paint this beautiful doodly dog. His name is Harley. All the supplies I'm using today are in my Paint 333 supply list that you can get at paint333.com. Except for Hematite Genuine, I'm using Daniel Smith Hematite Genuine in my color mixes today. I already sampled some mixes. I couldn't decide what colors to use for this dog right away, but now I know. And we are going to be using a beautiful peachy mix of Azo Yellow, Buff Titanium, Opera Pink, and Hematite Genuine. And I already have a well with all 4 of those colors here that I'm going to use from this well as we're painting. So that's going to be the highlight color. My plan is to paint all the fluffy furry details with Hematite Genuine and neutral tint, and then come back and glaze with this blend of 4 colors afterwards. We're going to start by masking out some of these white hair details, and I love to apply masking fluid with the backside of a pointy palette knife, and I'm also using PBO masking fluid, which is my favorite masking fluid that I've tried. All right, now our masking fluid is dry. We're going to start with the eyes. I like to go in with a heavy mix of neutral tint and give myself some outlines, basically, to work with. So I have that heavy mix going onto my silver black velvet size 6 round brush. And I'm just going to paint everywhere where I see the darkest darks. And I always try to keep in mind areas that maybe have a thinner outline of black, just so I don't do too thick of a line in those areas and make it look a little bit cartoony. And then I like to have another size 6 round brush just for water. And I like to have that handy so I can soften edges, add in water, do all those things as I go. And this guy has chunky fur, so I'm trying to keep that in mind as I use my grainer brush and make those furry, fluffy details. And then I'm coming in and doing the darkest darks that I see inside of his eye as well. Painting around those reflections, making sure I save that white space. And then we're going to just repeat that process for the other eye. This eye seems a little bit more challenging. It's very much in shadow. I had to brighten it up, the reference photo, quite a bit. So I'm just really trying to make sure I get the colors where they're supposed to be and save white space where that needs to be. He's got this nice little highlight on both sides, kind of the whites of his eye. So I'm just trying to make sure I work around that too. And the cool thing about this dog, with all the white fur that he has, is once we get the eyes and the nose and the mouth in place, the rest of him is going to go by really fast. That's going to be a lot of fun. It's fun to see big progress when you're, especially when you're working like this at first and just kind of working in such a detailed way that takes time. Okay, what I want to do next is come in with the reflective areas in the pupil that are not the white reflection, but kind of that ultramarine blue reflection. So kind of just finishing that pupil shape with this color, this ultramarine color, while working around those bright white reflections. And I just have a little bit too much on my brush. So I'm coming in and dabbing it a little bit here. And I'm not afraid to touch into that neutral tint and let it blend a little bit together, because that can look nice too. And this eye looks a little intense, doesn't it? But we'll fix that. He's got a really hairy area right here, so I'm going to finish that actually with a greener brush, which is funny. You don't do that with eyes very often. So same thing over here. I'm going to work around those white reflections and just finish this pupil shape in ultramarine. Coming in with kind of a watery-ish mix, because ultramarine is so intense you don't need a ton of it. So I'm even going to lift a little bit of that back next to the reflections. I think would look good. All right, let's let those dry, and then we're going to move on to the nose. We'll come back and finish the irises and the other layers of the eye. So I like to do the same thing with my nose and give ourselves some nice black outlines to work with. So I'm just going in the darkest areas I see with a nice outline of neutral tint again. This line seemed a little too heavy to me, so I'm trying to soften it, make it a little thinner. And he's definitely got a nice hairy bottom to his nose too. So taking care of those hairy edges before that neutral tint dries. And I'm going to soften this side into that bigger nostril shape. And I'm going to bring some of that neutral tint over here. And even pull that into this hairy edge over here with the grainer brush as well. And now that layer of the nose needs to dry, so let's move on to the tongue, and we'll just kind of keep alternating while those layers dry until we're finished with this part. So I'm going to go ahead and paint with water just on the tongue. I want you to be able to see this, so I'm just going to tint it a little bit. And we're going all along right up to the teeth, but not quite all the way up to the hair, because we are going to pull that into that edge to create that hairy edge. All right, I got a nice pool there. Making sure I'm kind of all the way up to the teeth. And even if you go into the gum shape on the bottom lips and things, that's okay, because we're gonna go over that with black. So let's come in and we'll just layer in some colors to get this beautiful tongue color. So I'll come in with a heavy mix of opera pink first. Let that swirl around into the water that we already laid down. I want to make sure I get that nice tooth shape accurate. There we go. Looks like the tongue kind of goes over the tooth a little bit on that side. Okay, and then it kind of comes up around the tooth here. So I'm going to bring the water up around the tooth. There we go. That looks nice. And I'm going to grab some ultramarine blue so we can get a nice purple. I'm going to put that near the top. And come in with some more pink and let that blend together. Bring it over to this side. And then I think what we would like to do next is just put some buff titanium towards the bottom. And that kind of muddles it, makes it a little bit more like an actual tongue color. So you have to get a lot on your brush in order for it to actually release into that water. go. It's looking a little bit better. Let's put some more opera pink. I just love how it does sometimes. That's the funnest part, is just seeing what happens. So now let's go ahead and bring this into those hairy edges with a nice dry grainer brush. We're working with a really heavy pool of water, so our grainer brush doesn't need to be too wet. And it's really chunky and it's pretty long too, so I'm trying to make nice long strokes with my grainer brush. So I'm kind of using the side of my grainer brush almost to get that up there and to pick those nice long white hairs along the dog's mouth. That looks cool. And I think while this is wet, I actually want to come in with my neutral tint, at least down here where it's really dark, and let it bleed into it a little bit. Let that pink bleed into the neutral tint shape. Doing the same thing with my grainer brush, bringing that neutral tint up, because it's a very hairy edge here. We do have some of this hair masked out, so we have a little bit of wiggle room. Don't have to be crazy precise. And in general, you don't have to be crazy precise because we want it to look like it's actually watercolor. And I'm gonna go ahead and bring that neutral tint down along the bottom lip too. Nice heavy mix of neutral tint. He, Harley, has a nice little, okay, here we go. Like a fluffy edge on the bottom of the lip and a little bit of a reflection. So I'm going to try to paint around that too. Painting around the teeth. I'm going to grab some water. And I'm actually going to put in a little bit of opera pink towards the top. And go ahead and go around the teeth with this opera pink brush. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, that looks right. So I'm just letting these pools of color blend together around the teeth. And distinguishing the teeth, but not too much. Those are a little bit suggestive, and we can come in and soften these edges too. We will after they're dry around the teeth, and that will look nice. And what I think I'm going to do here is just drop in water instead of actually saving the reflection. I think I'm going to try that. And then lift that out. We'll have to babysit this too. Make sure it doesn't totally fill in with the neutral tint. I dropped in more water, hoping maybe it'll push it away. Push it and lift it. We'll keep an eye on that as it dries. Let's see. This is pretty. I like this. I think maybe even a little bit more buff titanium. Maybe we can get it to blend and push the color around even more in cool ways. And I'm coming in with just my wet brush and facilitating a little bit of it to mix just a little bit better. This is pretty. I think that looks really cool. It's kind of intense though, but we'll see. It's not necessarily that accurate, you know, according to the reference photo, but it looks really cool. So sometimes we just have to let that happen. Okay, a little bit more ultramarine right here. And even a little bit more opera pink. See if that can make it more purpley instead of super blue. And we're babysitting this reflection, seeing if we can lift it out too. I'm gonna put a little more water in there. Okay, so we'll come back and do this again, do our second layer there after it dries. We can come back to the eyes now and do the iris. This doodle has brown eyes, but they're really dark brown. So I'm going to give myself kind of a mix of quinacridone gold and opera pink for a really rich brown that will mix better with the neutral tint. So that's the opera pink, neutral tint, and quinacridone. And that opera pink just makes sure, helps us so it doesn't get green. That's really pretty. So I'm just going to do a heavy mix on a wet brush so that the color pools, and go ahead and fill in that iris shape. And I'm just dragging it in a little bit for that hair that he has along this edge. And let's go and do the same thing. Just making sure we save those beautiful reflections around the eyes too. I'm even kind of painting over some of that neutral tint too. I think that looks nice. And then I have my blotted brush, it's very much blotted. Just seeing if maybe I can soften some of those parts, maybe those harsher edges. Blend them a little bit with the neutral tint we already laid down too. And the other cool thing that could be nice is even lifting out just a little bit along one side of the iris and make it look really dynamic and pretty right there. The other good thing about using that opera pink with this mix is that we don't have to be so afraid of it blending with the ultramarine that we laid down and creating green, because it won't do that with that opera pink in there. I'm going to do the same thing, lift out a little highlight on this eye. And then I'm going to go ahead and go in and soften. So just have my blotted wet brush. It's wet, so it's just water only, and it's blotted. And I'm just going to see if I can kind of soften the edges by kind of picking up some of the color that we've already laid down along the edge. So we're not actually adding any color right now. We're just using our barely wet brush to pick it up, soften some of these harsher edges, bring in some color into the highlight, and give it a little bit of shape. And I'm even going to try to lift off a little bit more of that pupil right below the reflection. So it almost looks like the reflection is extending into the pupil, but in a really muddled way. And let's just see what happens if we put a little touch cobalt teal in the reflection too. I like that. I'm going to soften a little bit over here too. I'm going to grab a little bit, like my buff titanium has some opera pink in it. So I'm kind of grabbing that, putting it in the white of his eye over here. And just softening that in a little bit too. Pretty, that's really pretty. I also want to fill in this highlight a little bit. It's a highlight, but it's very much in shadow. So I filled that in a little bit. And I'm gonna do the same thing over here. It's my blotted brush. Pick up the pigment that's surrounding these really nice reflections and soften them. And sometimes I lift out the color that's next to them too, to kind of give the illusion that the reflection is even a little bit bigger and muddled. Very happy with that. I love the cobalt there. That was a really good idea. I'm going to come in with another layer of the brown on the darker part of the eye. And even on the lighter part of the eye, and soften that in too. Just because he's got very dark brown eyes. And I'm just still softening the reflection a tiny bit. Okay, we'll come back in. I think it needs another layer of black, but we'll wait till that's dry. Let's finish the nose. We got to make sure we're babysitting this. This reflection's turning out really nice. I'm just dropping in some water because it's still wet, so this will still work. But it's getting to that stage where it'll create a pretty bloom. So this is a good time to add in water and let it push that pigment around. Pretty, pretty, pretty. It's really pretty. I like that. let's have fun with the nose. I hope you have your mix, whatever you're gonna use for the like this peachy color. Doesn't have to be the 4 that I'm using, but I ended up really liking how that looked, that mix right there. So that's gonna be our highlight color, and we'll probably use a little bit of that in the nose along with our neutral tint. Okay, let's go ahead and just paint the nose with water. Just gonna tint it so you can see where I'm putting it. Tinting it with opera pink here. And I'm not really too nervous to touch that neutral tint, mostly because I know it won't spread crazy. If you're using a different brand than me, it might. So if you want to play it safe, you can just definitely just avoid kind of touching that neutral tint area too much if it's making you nervous. Okay, a nice little layer of color there. I'm gonna clean off my brush that has a lot of opera pink on it. And I'm gonna come in with that mix of color. I'm adding a little bit more, I'm touching the pink. It's kind of nice because you can, if whatever you see in your palette, I'm like, oh, it needs a little more pink, so I'm gonna rub on that pink color and bring it into the mix a little bit more. It's kind of a fun way to do that. So I'm putting it all along this side. And then we're gonna come in with our neutral tint. Heavy mix. And I'm kind of doing it that way because his highlight side is over here. Shadow side's over here. It's kind of over here and towards the bottom. The light's kind of coming in like this. So we have wiggle room. So laying down this neutral tint over on the darker areas of the nose. Let's see, I'm gonna take my wet brush, put in some water, see if we can let it mix. And it's kind of dark, so I'm just gonna lift out a little bit of that neutral tint too. And let this pink color kind of come into the area of the neutral tint. Doing the same thing over here. Adding in water and lifting some of that neutral tint out as well. I'm going to drop in a little bit more of that color mix we made. Very pretty. And then I want to grab my grainer brush and go ahead and give a little bit of that nice furry texture. Go ahead and pull some of that color down into the nose. I'm gonna get my grainer brush kind of wet too, and maybe make it, yeah, there we go. Almost like we're painting this area too, not just pulling the color in. Because he's got these, he must have black skin underneath the fur in some areas, like maybe some black dots, because it looks like this part is black underneath all that white fur. So I'm just letting it kind of look a little darker right there with the grainer brush. Let's see here. I'm gonna go ahead and bring up some of this color up here too. And maybe soften that a little bit. I like that little highlight. That's pretty. I'm gonna grab a little bit more of our mix. See if I can just drop some in. It's kind of pushing, but it can be really pretty if we allow it to do that. I'm gonna go ahead and use your grainer brush too. We don't need to be so intense about these furry edges, because then it'll kind of look, it'll look tight, it'll look forced. So I'm not gonna do like every single hair and every single furry edge perfectly furry. I'm lifting out a little bit of this. It kind of pushed it maybe more than I would have liked. But I do really like the color we got here. And I think what I want to do is let this dry and then come in and glaze it. So we can glaze in some more black detail to get these edges a little sharper, and then even glaze some pink over the top. But for now I do like that. I think I'm gonna leave that alone. Let's go ahead and finish this little part of the lip here with the neutral tint. I didn't want to do that when the tongue was wet because I wasn't so keen to have this shape blend into the tongue. This gum shape. So I'm just laying down a heavy mix of neutral tint on the dry paper. And I'm gonna, again, give it some, make sure we have that nice hairy edge happening. So how easy was that, right? The other thing that we kind of did, or that I did, is I moved the tongue into here, and that's not really what's happening in the reference photo. So I'm gonna see if I can lift that out and use that pigment maybe to go around the tooth a little bit, just a little bit. So that's nice, that's lifting out nicely. And then I'm gonna soften around the tooth shape, all the little teeth he has. So again, I'm just lifting where I over painted the tongue. And now I'm gonna come in and just soften around the teeth. So there's no color that I'm adding to my brush. I'm just using the wet brush to pick up the pigment that we already laid down and bring it around the teeth. And the other thing you could do is even grab some of this mix. I'm gonna put a little bit along the bottom because this is actually kind of the color of teeth. So I'm gonna put in some of this because it does look kind of funny when their teeth are perfectly white, unless they're getting brightly lit up by a light source. So I'm just gonna I'm gonna lift off down here too and get the bottom of this tooth more blurry. like that. I like this little highlight of blue right there. It looks cool. I'm really happy how that turned out. I'm gonna lift out, see if I can lift out some little highlights to make it look like his tongue has a little bit of dimension. So just a wet brush, scrubbing that pigment off in whatever shape I'm going for. And he's got some cute little highlights along his teeth at the bottom too. I think, I'm not sure, but I'm thinking like it's lifting kind of well because it's almost revealing the buff titanium. Sometimes it's hard to lift. But anyway, I think we're picking up some buff titanium and it makes it, it's looking like making the lifting easier. And then I lifted out that tongue. I'm gonna go ahead and try to lift out the tongue line, I should say, because we've been working on the tongue the whole time. This little edge of the tongue too. Lift out this part down here. Oh, I love it. Look at how much dimension we got just from lifting and softening. Oh, you know what we didn't do? What I didn't do was I didn't grainer brush. Let's see if we can get a wet grainer brush and pull some of this black down. I'm gonna have to scrub it now. I'm gonna scrub it and see if I can get it wet again. Okay, there we go. A little bit of success scrubbing it. There we go, and getting some of that reactivated. Okay, look at that. I was nervous for a second there. Okay, cool. So we scrubbed it, and now we're gonna get that furry edge back. It's only kind of furry right there. I kind of like it nice and smooth over here. That's pretty. It's really pretty. It's such a sunny day here today. I am so excited to go for my run after I paint. What a life. I like running in the afternoon. I've tried many times to run in the morning, and I never regret it. But I'm like, well, why am I pushing myself to do this when I have a time that I really love doing it? I don't even need the motivation. Like, no, I'm going to do it when I really want to do it. Okay, so now I'm just kind of making sure my values make sense. Making some of these gum areas a little bit darker, because when we add water and we're mixing colors on the paper, it's very easy for this pigment to move around and get lighter. So I'm just kind of doing another layer of this neutral tint, so it's nice and dark where it should be nice and dark. How fun is that? While we have our beautiful neutral tint on our brush, which we always do because this is my black brush, I'm going to come in with another, load it with some more nice heavy mix, and make sure that we have our eyes where we want them to be. So I'm just going to see if I can make it look really nice and dark where it should be really nice and dark with this neutral tint color. So I'm kind of just painting over some of these areas. And like we said on the tongue too, how we're adding in so much water, we're using these beautiful watery techniques, it can get to a point where it's hard to, well, where it just washes out. So that's where it's nice to come in, do another layer if it needs it in areas. This is actually supposed to be dark, but I love what it did there, so I'm gonna wait on that. I might make it dark down the road. I'm gonna maybe soften some of this too while we're thinking about these eye details. So I'm kind of lifting this edge up because it's kind of a furry edge on the reference photo. And then just coming in with our next layer of neutral tint. I love a really beautiful thin line of where it should be nice and thin. I think that can just look so good. This eye just has more shadow too. So I'm kind of blending more of that neutral tint even into the iris. That is so fun. I love how our nose dried. That looks so great. So we're kind of doing the same thing where we're just layering. I'm gonna layer another layer of neutral tint on the nose. Wherever it just got a little bit muddled and muted. But these little lines, these things that the water does, even if it's not part of the reference photo, as long as it doesn't mess with the proportions, or it makes it look super wonky, I will leave those in there. And what I'm specifically referring to is this line around the nose. I love how the pigment settled in right there. So I'm leaving it there, even though that's not really happening on the reference photo. So I'm gonna come in and maybe do a little bit more with my grainer brush too. But I like how that nose just really ran into the fur over here. So I don't want to cover that up too much. I might just soften this a little bit. I think maybe a little bit of a crisper shape right there would look good. Cool. Look at that. We're basically done with the features. Okay, we have done the features. All we have left is the body, and it looks like a lot, right? But it's gonna go by fast. While we're painting this, we just have to keep in mind we're gonna underpaint, so not paint too much on the light side. And then at the end, we'll come in with our glaze, which is a mix of the 4 colors: the Opera Pink, the Azo Yellow, the Buff Titanium, and the Hematite Genuine. If you don't have those colors, mix up whatever highlight color you want. You could do yellow, you could do pink, you could do a peachy color like this using other colors. Just have a lot of fun with it. You could use cobalt teal. There's so many possibilities. So what I'm gonna do is start with the dark side, and we're gonna go and do the ear first. And Harley here has chunky hair. So we're gonna make sure we kind of keep that in mind as we're coming in with our grainer brush and doing those furry edge details. And I think what I'm going to do, since he does have such pronounced fur texture, I think we're going to see, I think this is what I want to do. I think I want to come in right away using my 3/4 inch flat brush and paint wet on dry. So right on dry paper, but usually when I do this, I try to make sure I get a lot on the paper, unless I'm glazing. But in this case, I'm gonna get a nice heavy mix. And I'm already doing splatter. See, we're working ahead already. We're such overachievers. So let's just paint. Nice heavy mix of neutral tint, painting these darkest dark areas. And I'm kind of painting around. I'm gonna get more water. I wanna have enough water on here. I'm gonna come in, let's see, I'm gonna do a wet. I have my filbert, 3/4 inch filbert grainer brush. I'm gonna see if I can just pull some of this neutral tint into the part of his ear that's lighter. It's just, oh, he's just such cute hair. So we're gonna let that, even sometimes you grab the pigment, right? That's already on the paper. And making sure we get this chunkiness to it. And I want to make sure I have my Hematite Genuine too. I kind of haven't done that yet. I'm a little new to using Hematite Genuine. I actually just put it on my palette today for this painting. I thought, you know what? This is the third painting I've used it in. I think it deserves a place on my palette. So I went ahead and loaded some on my grainer brush. I'm going to see if I can make some of these chunky. The other thing I want to do, what I like to do too when I'm doing grainer brush furriness is have another brush handy to soften little bits of it as we go. And I just want to be careful because I can't really take away paint, like this dark paint, once it's on there. Let's paint around the eye too. So I'm just coming in with some water, softening. And the advantage too is we'll get more texture happening here if we have a little bit of water on the paper. And then we just want to make sure too we really get the shape of his face. So we're not just going all over the place, we're really working around. His mouth has these tufts of hair, his forehead, he's got these eyebrows, and then he's got these ears too. And each one kind of has a different fur pattern. I fell hard for Hematite Genuine the first time I tried it. It's so gorgeous. I'm gonna blend that in a little bit down here. Okay, it's pretty. I love how chunky up here, these little chunky tufts of hair. So I just want to make sure I'm capturing that. brush. I like these little white chunky areas and these darker chunky areas. And he's got some just kind of wispier hair around his eye. And it's just so fun. It's just so fun to feel like you're making such big progress in a much shorter amount of time than, you know, all the details and all the layers we had to put on the features. But that's what's really fun too about white dogs, is they go by really fast. The fur does. But you have to also, I mean, there's not as much room for error. So in that sense, it can be a little bit intimidating because you want to keep how fresh they look. You want to keep all that freshness intact too. Oh, I like what's happening here. I'm going to put in more water. Some of these areas where it's pushing the pigment around, I'm going to let that keep happening. Now, it's hard for me not to go in with the color at the same time. So I know what I said at the end will glaze, but I'm going to go ahead and do it kind of at the same time at least and see what happens. Just because while it's wet, it'll do different things than once it's dry. And I want to make sure I take advantage of that. Now we do have buff titanium in this mix, which means it's a little bit opaque. Okay, I'm glad we did that. I'm glad we put some in there. And we can glaze more too as we go. And I've always been a fan too of putting the color around the eyes, because then your eye will go to that area where it sees the color. That'll look really fun. So I'm going to see if I can get maybe more of a watery mix as we approach the lighter side here. And maybe lay down a little bit of water. It'll just behave differently if we have a little bit of water, a really thin layer of water. Kind of using the side of my grainer brush too to emphasize just how chunky the hair is. And then softening it too if we need to. He's got the cutest little eyebrow tufty eyebrows. This is a fun fur pattern too, to have these visible brush strokes. And then kind of getting the value right too, because there's clearly some areas that are gray and not just pure white or pure black. All right, keeping going. Not much has changed. I just want to make sure I keep more white on the light side over here, but this ear is definitely darker. So I'm going to try to get like a watery mix. And I dabbed it off a little bit just so I could get a little bit of separation in the bristles, so we can see that this eyebrow shape happening where the ear and the forehead kind of meet that really cute little eyebrow he's got. Just getting even more of a watery mix for these values to make more sense, these lighter hairy areas. Just making sure I get this ear as dark as it should be. Layering some more Hematite Genuine in there. And that's very dark right there. This eye area is darker too. I would say this dog would be quite the challenge without a grainer brush. Very happy to have a grainer brush for this dog. And while it's wet, coming in with my other grainer brush that has our nice peachy color on it, Making sure I get some color around the eye. And anywhere else I kind of see this highlight. This is a highlight from the lighting that's happening. So it's not, he doesn't have peach fur, but it's just the reflections that we're seeing from the light in the reference photo. But that's the cool thing about highlight and shadow colors is it's just those can change depending on your mood as an artist or whatever you kind of see in that reference photo that you find yourself inspired to paint. I painted a Westie the other day and I gave him yellow hair and blue hair, which obviously he does not have. But it was so fun. It's so fun to do that. So pretty how it comes around. I'm going to come and do the dark side of the muzzle. So I'm just laying down a little bit of water in kind of a sporadic way. I'm going to give it some of these color, the color and the gray. Definitely see a lot of this color right around the snout area too. And sometimes these edges can just be so harsh. So when I'm adding color, I'm not afraid to soften them a little bit. Just needed to re-wet that, rehydrate it a little bit. Just tapping in some color too and letting it blend in where he's got these bigger areas of shadow in the fur. Trying to say he's got like the ear and then his body and the neck. This is kind of where the, okay. So I think I might do it like this. Do this in shadow a little bit. So now I'm kind of going negative painting around his snout, giving this a little bit of shadow right here. Like this shadow fur that he's got going on. It's just kind of wispier, not super chunky down here. I'm gonna get a little color too. I just see some color right here. And I want to make that a little bit darker in value, so I'm going to add in some more of this too. It's granulating in really pretty ways. And I was like, oh, I kind of want to smooth it so it looks a little bit more cohesive, but I also love it. So where do you find the balance? I don't know. It's impossible. It's too pretty. You gotta keep it pretty. Let's see. I'm gonna I blotted this, kind of cleaned it off so I could pull some of this color down into the shape instead of adding color to it. That's cool. That's a really good shadow. You can really tell where the head is now. I like that we distinguish that in there. Now I'm pulling a little bit of it up just because his muzzle fur is pretty chunky in some areas. And you can see I'm catching some of the color from the tongue, bringing it up too, which is just fine. I think it just softens it and makes it look a little bit, well, softer. It makes it look softer. And then we just can negative paint some of those chunky moments into his fur without overpainting it too much. You can come back. We can always do some more. Just adding a little bit more color right around his nose. I really, really like that. And I gotta keep in mind too, he's got this darker skin underneath his fur, right around his nose, and it's so cute. So cute. I had a pit bull that had spots growing up, and he'd have that too. He hardly had any hair. It was so short and white, and you could see his little black spots on his skin. I always just thought that was so cute. He's like our little Dalmatian wannabe dog. Super cute. So sometimes it looks best to just enhance the existing chunks that you've painted with a few more layers versus just scattering chunks everywhere. So try giving like the areas you've already painted a little bit more dimension, another layer of color or paint, or soften around it. And that can it can give it a lot of depth instead of just making it like a sprinkle cake. Because that's the other piece of this puzzle, is not doing too much. Even right now, I love it. And I want to make sure I keep this whole area super, super, super minimal if I can. So what I think I'm going to do is, this grainer brush still has a lot of that color on it. I'm going to wipe some of it off, try to get in a nice watery mix, but have it be a little bit blotted. And I can see most of the shading is at the bottom of this lighter lip. So that's where I'm going to concentrate my painting. And then along the edges to give it a little bit of dimension. I'm also grabbing some hematite with that same grainer brush. A really watery mix, because I really just want to suggest the fur over here. So So I just kind of pulling that existing color and softening it into the white a little bit. Really light values over there. Happy with that. He's got some down here, so I'm going to do the same thing. Just grab a little bit of that hematite. It's a little bit maybe wet. You can see maybe he's got some like crispy drool on his fur a little bit, which actually is kind of cute. And it's a little variegation in texture, so I want to make sure I get those little wispy bits in there, all with my grainer brush. That's cool. I like that a lot. The only other thing is maybe we should bring this outline of the tooth. I just kind of don't like how that tooth has an outline per se. So I'm going to make it look like that was a little bit more intentional. And he's got kind of a shadow on that side of the tooth. So I'm going to bring that down over like that. That looks better. That looks really good. I like that a lot. I love how the blue is popping in the eye and the tongue because we don't have the blue anywhere else. Oh, it's so fun. It's so fun. The things you could do with just a few colors. Okay, I'm going to take watery mix and get the bottom of this hair, if I can distinguish where that is a little bit. Okay, I'd like to do the body in a really nice, loose, abstract way. And now I'm distracted. Sometimes you see something and you're like, oh, I want to do this. And it's good. You got to jump on those things because you come back, you might not see it again. So I don't always do it in a very systematic way for teaching, but it's also realistic. Like, this is how you paint. And it's not always in a really systematic way. Even sometimes at the beginning when I explain what colors I'm planning to use, and then I end up using totally different colors. Or I say, I'm not going to use purple in this painting, you guys. And then I use a ton of purple. I did that with the German Shepherd. And it looked so good at the end. I'm really glad I did purple, but it's just kind of funny. So now I'm just adding a little bit more value up here because he's got more gray hair on this side. And I think it'll look good if we give him some of that gray hair instead of having it be super stark white over here, because it'll offset from here. So I'm just using basically a wet brush and pulling some of this color to make it more like a gray ear instead of having those white sections. Just think that'll look a little better. It's almost like I'm kind of just glazing with water a little bit to get it to be more gray. And then gradually coming back to the white fur that's over on this side. The other thing maybe too before we do the body is I want to, I think, give this, I do want to make this a little bit darker of an area right here. So I'm going to load in a little neutral tint and then blend that down. That'll just give his eye a little bit more dimension. I like that. Looks nice. And then you can paint in even a little bit more hairy bits. And even do it on this side too. I'm gonna make that a little lighter. He's got a nice dark hair right there, but it's a little harsh. So I'm gonna use my artistic license, granted to me when I was born. Oh, it's like a dad joke, you guys. And just soften it a little bit. It's pretty. You know you're doing a good job if you just kind of want to like take a break and stare at it. That's always fun. Look at how this granulated right here. And over here, Hematite genuine. Okay, that's why we achieved that. Let's do the body. I'm going to paint with water. And he's wearing a collar, so it's hard for me to tell, and I'm not painting the collar in. So it's a little hard for me to tell like exactly where the dark hair is, but we're gonna go with it. So I'm kind of just painting almost as if I was painting the hair. And it's kind of nice to do this too because you can almost see what's happening. And if you like where you painted before you paint it. So let's see, I got neutral tint on this brush. It's a little harsh. I'm gonna go ahead and get a watery mix of Hematite Genuine and kind of make that, because he's got some gray hair on his body. So we're gonna give him some of that. And then I think he's got some gray hair under his collar right here. And it seems chunky in some of these spots. It seems a little chunky in some of these spots. There's somebody coming up to my door and they're like waving at me. And I'm thinking, oh no, I'm in a tight spot painting. I can't really help you. Little dude. Little dude. Okay. I like this. This is looking really good. And then the other thing we can do as it moves towards the light side is go ahead and take our light side mix maybe give it a little bit more pink, a little bit more yellow. The thing about yellow with hematite though is you will get green. You can see that when we mixed the yellow with the hematite, it has like a kind of a green undertone. But that buff titanium, that pink, will really help with that. So I'm gonna kind of put that towards the middle and let it blend into the dark shapes. Maybe I do want a little bit more yellow. Oh, that's pretty. Well, that's kind of intense. I do like it. I love this method of mixing colors because it's kind of ridiculous to think you're going to mix 4 colors on the paper. I'll do it with 2 and sometimes 3, but 4, it's a lot. So having these 4 ready to mix and your ability to make them mix deeper in any one of these colors, more saturated with any one of those colors, gives you a lot of control over the color you put down on the paper. Really cool. So now we have these beautiful abstract shapes and I love them. So now we have this ability to soften them, blend them, and give them furry edges if we want. I love this, so I'm gonna give myself a little bit more of that happening. Okay, I kind of want to do a really watery mix and see if I can get a little bit of color in some of these watery shapes. And then you can just pick what areas, what shapes would look good with a little bit of a furry edge. But don't make them all furry because then it will be boring. So just pick a little bit here and there. And then let them bloom as we're doing and meet. And then keep in mind the shapes of the features. So I want to make sure we can see, okay, this is where his body starts, this is where his ear is. This is kind of the neck underneath his face. He's also not wearing a collar though, and I think that's part of why he has a little bit of a indent. So I might blend that up together a little bit right there. And then you can create little wispies by just pulling some color from the existing shapes. And it's good too to just step back and look at it. I'm just going to give it a little more dimension, a little bit value shift. Where it might need that, but I love the blooming, I love the separation. It's almost like the Hematite Genuine gave its granulation properties to the other colors we mixed it with. Thank you. How generous of you, Hematite. What a team player. Which is the crazy thing is, like, we're basically done, you guys. Now it's a matter of glazing, colors. Anywhere else we might think it'll look good. the buff titanium too, because of its opacity, will allow you to get a little bit, maybe if you have overpainted an area and you want to get a little bit of a white chunk back, you could go in and do that. We do still have to remove the masking and then get those shapes softened. The other thing that's kind of nice is to give these little furry edges like a soft edge or even a value shift within like a curve of a fur chunk. Thinking about if it's darker maybe at the bottom and then it gets lighter. And then just also thinking about the features and making sure that you can tell this is where his mouth fur is, this is where his chin fur is, ear fur. You can really see what's going on without overpainting it. We want to make sure we're still letting the viewer see things for themselves. I think the more that the viewer has to fill in the details, the longer they'll want to look at it. Up to a point. I don't know. I see some like really abstracted work and I was like, well, what is it? I don't even know what it is. Which is, I mean, it's great. Some people love that. And I don't know if I'm one of them. But that's why I lean towards a blend of loose and detailed. Because then I just think you get the best of both worlds that way. And you get to just, it's just, you get interesting paintings that make sense that viewers want to look at. I love the little bit of yellow we have up by that eye. That looks really cool. Even this little touch of pink. Another great reason why mixing, like having a mix like this where you don't blend it all together completely, you allow yourself the ability to pick and choose which color you want to dominate the mix. Really cool. I'm going to come in, I'm going to grab a little of the mix that's really yellow and see if I can get a nice glaze of yellow over on the nose. And maybe pick up some more pink and let it get a little pink too. Pretty, pretty, that's really pretty. I'm going to do something similar just along the hairy edge. If we can get a little bit of yellow over there. And a lot of people ask me, how do you decide where to put the color? And that's something I'm still thinking through because I don't have like the perfect answer other than highlight color on the highlight side, shadow color on the shadow side. Think about your values. That's the best answer I have so far. Which I know can be kind of frustrating because I think people want to be like, but how do you know where to put it and why are you putting it there? And I don't always know, but I do know I'm thinking about values and making sure I'm really emphasizing the features, saving the highlights, and enhancing the portrait with color. So hopefully that is a helpful explanation for everybody. The only thing I think I would like, what do I have on this? Okay, is just a little glaze to distinguish this fur from this fur. I'm listening to the Ludlows from Legends of the Fall, the soundtrack. That movie is so sad, but it's I don't know. I grew up with that movie. And Snowy River, Wild Hearts Can't Be Broken. All these like Saturday afternoon movies I'd watch with my mom. Just such really good memories for me. It's really sweet. So I love listening to the soundtracks from those movies that I grew up with. Okay, so now I'm just basically glazing values in here to give it dimension. I don't want it to be too harsh. And I lost a little bit of that pink that I kind of like right there. There we go. Bring that back. And then sometimes I blur my eyes on the reference photo, and that really helps me see the values without being distracted by the details. And then I can come in and know, oh, I need a little bit more of a value. I need it more mid-tony right here, a little bit more shadowy here. So glazing is it's such a fun way to end a painting too, because it really brings it together. Makes it look so good. I'm really happy with where we're at, and if you've painted along with me, I always say now it's a good time if you think you're done, especially if you like or feel like you could be done but you're not sure. Just take a step back, give it an hour, give it a day, come back to it. Most likely you'll love it and you won't want to do anything more to it. It's good to give yourself a little bit of time, a little bit of a breather, so you don't overpaint it. But we do want this to dry and then remove the masking. Before we remove the masking, just from like stopping the recording, taking a little look at it, I feel like maybe we need to distinguish the shape of his bottom jaw fur a little bit. So I'm just grabbing my grainer brush and I'm going to kind of soften it into the middle part of his fur. That looks really nice. I'm glad we did that. To give it a little dimension there. I'm trying to think too, we have this kind of doing it into this too. There we go. That looks nice. The other thing I'd like to do is think about splatter, and I think a little bit of black splatter would look kind of nice. Maybe over here. And then sometimes I like to do like watery blobs too. But you want them to look a little bit like splatter, so you kind of just give them these little craggly edges. You can always come in and do by hand little splatters too. The other thing is, now that we're at more of a finished state, I'm not too crazy about these splatters. I'm just going to lighten them if I can. Just a little harsh. We'll see if it allows me to do that. Yeah, I like that better already. Even just that little shape right there is kind of cool. I just think these would look a little bit better if they weren't black. I might be overthinking this. You know what? I like them better now. I'm gonna leave it like that. All right, let's remove the masking. I just used a kneaded eraser. There's masking fluid remover tools. Those can be handy. They can be a little harsh, but they work. And I try to remember everywhere we put the masking because it's going to be covered up. I know we did the eyes and the nose. And then I just like to just feel it. It should feel flat. So if you still have masking, it'll be sticky. Yeah, we still have some right there. And then you would just kind of soften it. So I'll just use a wet brush. And typically I'll just kind of scrub around it and get some pigment to go into like the beginning areas and around on the sides if you need to make them a little thinner. Sometimes you even paint over them completely with your wet brush so they're not crazy harsh white. Hi, bud. You can come in.
I've been in the video.
Yeah, I'm still not like... Well, you can come in. I'm recording right there if you want to come in right there.
Wait, you're recording? Because I want to be in the video.
You can come on in. Oh, I missed some masking right here.
Okay, guys, we missed the masking.
We got it now, though, right, bud?
Yeah, we got the masking.
We got it now.
Masking.
You might not be in the shot way over there, but...
Yeah, but I'm not in it.
Yeah, I know. It's a little tricky. Are you in it now?
This is hard. Be in it, guys.
Did you get in there?
I'm trying. Maybe if we move a tiny bit, I could get into the camera.
Okay, well, I gotta keep painting though, bud.
Okay.
But I like that you're here.
Okay, guys. I'm just going to try to begin this video. Try.
You gotta try it sometimes.
Okay. Hope I'm in the video. Because I am the best painter.
Are you the best painter, bud?
Maybe. If I can be in the video, I could.
No, what are you gonna do with me?
Well, if you feel like it's already done.
You feel like it's already done?
Except you need the red stuff.
What red stuff? Oh yeah, I decided to leave that out.
No.
Do you like that in there?
That would be so fun. Okay, tell me. Go in the comment. go in the comments and
Are you telling them what to do?
go in the comment. Just see. Go in the comment section, and see if you want me to be in any more of the videos. And just see if you want me to be in any more videos. Tell us in the comments.
I bet there are going to be some people who love you in the videos.
Okay.
This is kind of a boring part, so this was good timing, bud. Because we're just refining these little white hairs right here.
So yeah, go in the comment section and tell us if you want me to be in more videos. We hope you had fun painting Harley with us.
See you in the next video. Happy painting!
Subscribe and like the video.